everyone! What's up? This is Tris, and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. We will uncover the haunting truths of the slave trade on Africa's slave coast. Our focus will be on the Dahomey Kingdom, located inland from the slave coast, and its complex involvement in this dark chapter of history. We will explore how the Dahomey Kingdom, lacking natural barriers for protection, became an easy target for enemies. Faced with imminent threats, they made a crucial decision to participate in the slave trade. As a means of obtaining weapons for defense, we will witness their systematic slave raids, their sacrificial practices, and their dependence on the convenience of European trading partners. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you find this video interesting, don't hesitate to show some love by hitting that like button. We're going to explore a place that was once known as the Slave Coast in West Africa. It was a haunting shoreline, where countless Africans were captured and sold as slaves by Europeans. However, what makes this tale even more chilling is the fact that it was fellow Africans who facilitated this trade. By providing the Europeans with weapons and goods, they would then utilize these weapons to perpetuate further violence. Situated about 100 kilometers inland from the slave coast was the Dahomey Kingdom, surrounded by a unique environment. Unlike the jungle dwellers who had natural defenses such as dense forests, swamps, and rivers, the Dahomey Kingdom lacked these protective barriers. Consequently, they became an easy target for their enemies. In the early days, the slave trade primarily involved the sale of individuals who were already considered criminals or prisoners of war within Africa. Even if they had remained on the continent, they would have likely been treated as slaves. The Dahomey Kingdom, vulnerable to potential surprise attacks, found itself in a precarious situation. In order to secure firearms, their only means of defense, they made the fateful decision to engage in the slave trade. They opted to participate before being subjected to an attack themselves. Unable to access the sea, the Dahomey Kingdom could only act as a subcontractor, supplying slaves to the coastal regions, whose profitability was reliant on the convenience of European trading partners. However, in 1724, the Dahomey Kingdom took significant strides to change this predicament. They ventured into countries that had already commenced the slave trade earlier than themselves, and eventually gained control over ports where Europeans were particularly active. To maintain their prosperity, the Dahomey Kingdom required a constant influx of new slaves. Consequently, slave raids became a regular and systematic part of the kingdom's operations. Their army, which consisted of approximately 50,000 men, would launch attacks on neighboring countries and settlements, capturing the young as prisoners of war while eliminating the elderly and infirm. During these tumultuous times, the Dahomey king would convene meetings where he received various gifts from his people, including crops and sundries. Some of these gifts were then distributed back to the people as a gesture from the king himself. The prisoners of war served three primary purposes for the Dahomey king. The most crucial was their sacrifice to their ancestors. Despite the potential for greater profits by selling these prisoners to Europeans, the king never reduced the number of sacrifices. However, surplus prisoners were retained as slaves for the king, while the remainder were sold as merchandise to the Europeans. The Dahomey Kingdom continued its cycle of war and hostility. Driven by the need for more weapons to defend against imminent attacks, they would raid tirelessly, perpetuating the nightmarish loop of the slave trade. Ironically, while the Dahomey Kingdom managed to protect itself from complete destruction by obtaining firearms and fostering a system of social redistribution centered around the king, it eventually declined with changing times. During the period of overseas agriculture, Europeans constantly sought cheaper and more abundant labor. Slave-supplying countries like the Dahomey Kingdom found willing partners. However, a significant event in 19th century England shook the foundations of the Dahomey Kingdom, the abolition of slavery. In a quest to minimize production costs, The British subjected machine operators to long hours of labor for meager wages. This resulted in dire living conditions in the factory-ridden cities, which sparked a major social issue surrounding workers' rights. The momentum to abolish slavery gained traction in Britain, leading to the ban of the slave trade in 1807 and the abolition of slavery itself in 1833. With the trade now ostensibly illegal, the British exerted pressure on other nations to follow suit. Among them was the Dahomey Kingdom, where the British appealed to the king to end his involvement in the slave trade. However, the king believed that abruptly halting the foundation of his kingdom would plunge the country into chaos. Consequently, he adamantly rejected all British appeals. On the other hand, Abeokuta emerged as a country formed by those who had fled slave hunts and wars waged by the Dahomey Kingdom and others. The Dahomey army failed to conquer the impregnable rock fortress of Abeokuta, resulting in their inability to secure the captured resources. Although the Dahomey Kingdom remained indecisive, it was the French who took the first steps. They initiated a blockade on Dahomey's ports, preventing ships from entering or leaving. The Dahomey king made a temporary promise to end the slave trade under British pressure, but as expected, turmoil persisted within the country. In 1864, another significant conflict erupted between the Dahomey Kingdom and Abeokuta, with the latter emerging victorious once again. This dealt a severe blow to the Dahomey Kingdom, resulting in a sharp decline in the Dahomey slave trade. Eventually, the Dahomey Kingdom succumbed to the wave of change, sweeping across Africa, partitioning by European powers. As Europeans began mass-producing goods using machines, they turned their gaze towards Africa for abundant resources and markets to sell their finished products. The French were the first to directly engage with the port town under Dahomey's control, attempting to bring it under their dominion. However, the king of Dahomey refused to accept this and entered into war with France, while the Dahomey forces fought valiantly with European weapons. The French army possessed superior weaponry and organization. In 1894, the Dahomey Kingdom suffered a complete defeat and was absorbed into French West Africa. It was not until 1960 that Lefaume finally achieved full independence. The Dahomey Kingdom played a dual role as both an aggressor, attacking many Africans, and a victim, succumbing to the convenience of the Europeans. The impact of the transatlantic slave trade was massive, with over 10 million people estimated to have been forcibly taken from Africa. The reverberations of this dark period in history are still felt throughout the world today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. As always, take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.